Hello and welcome to StarCast from Planet Waves. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, the author of the Planet Waves horoscope and essay series, host of Planet Waves FM on Pacific Radio. Thank you for joining me. Today's edition of StarCast is designed to accompany the June 27th edition of Planet Waves, which is the July monthly horoscope. As mentioned last week, we did a special edition for the solstice on the 20th and have delayed the monthly until today. So this looks at events in July, and I'd like to tell you a few things about those events. But first, a couple of housekeeping notes. First, there's no written article today. I have been writing my brains out and submitted a very large horoscope file earlier this week, so I thought I should cool off and take it a little bit easy this week on the written article thing. Am planning something next week on the United States Sibley chart that references the United States Pluto return and how it is not over. However, more currently, I am working on the Trust Yourself mid-year readings. The charts are all cast, and I am planning to begin those recordings next week. This is a 12-part, i.e. 12-sign audio series on the astrology of self-trust, of having confidence in yourself. This topic is developing very nicely, actually, and it turns out to lend itself perfectly to astrological consideration. Planning to have that out before mid-July. It should take me, once I start working Tuesday or so of next week, should take me about one solid working week, maybe a little bit more, to pull that together. Also, the Cancer reading called Art is Everything came out on Monday night. That is available for instant access. A really lovely, thorough, motivating, inspiring, astrologically satisfying reading for those born under Cancer Sun, Moon, or Rising. And I think that covers it for the housekeeping hints for now. In my view, the astrology of July is dominated by one major factor that I have been writing about through the month over the past few weeks, and that is to say throughout June. And that is the group of 5 planets meeting in early Capricorn. I've said quite a bit about this, but just to refresh your memory, there's a cluster of slow movers in early Capricorn. They include Pholus, Quaoar, Ixion, Cupido, a planet without a body, and that is being joined by retrograde Ceres, which is going to move into that little constellation of points in early Capricorn, slow down, stay there for a while, turn retrograde, and move back. So basically, we're going to get this all through Northern Hemisphere summer, and it is going to be one of these things that is lurking in the background, but that I think is influencing many things in the foreground. And I've been working up to my main point about this, and I'm going to keep writing about this as it goes on, because I think the whole thing is so significant, because this is all describing the meeting place between the events in the family of origin home, and that goes back some generations, and how those events project into society. That is to say, what we call society is really a lot of people having kind of eruptions of family of origin issues, mommy, daddy issues and this kind of thing, and household authoritarianism issues, and then that all just ends up becoming things like the government. And we expect things to be the way they are because early family life prepared us for them to be so, and the so that they are is not usually that fair. For example, to children, it does not take their views into account, or maybe that's for old folks like us, and maybe in current times the views of children are taken way too much into account, and either way that's going to create a distortion. And then these things, not only do they project themselves into the affairs of society, they also land in our immediate interpersonal relationships, that is to say, partnerships, and also marriages and other types of relationships that are more personal and emotional in nature. I don't want to call them romantic. I think that's a stupid word. They're not entirely marriages, so there's not really a word for this, I guess. And you say partnerships, that includes business partnerships. There could be an influence of this in business partnerships. What I'm talking about are intimate relationships between people. Generally speaking, one-on-one relationships. And the thing that makes the astrology of July so interesting is that this Capricorn cluster is taking place at about 8 or 9 degrees of Capricorn. Caprolus and Quaoar, for example, are in a conjunction at about 8.5 degrees. And the lunar nodes are in Aries and Libra. The lunar nodes' overall direction is retrograde, and so we are in a situation where this cluster of planets, which is churning out this karmic family material, is going to be square the lunar nodes. And what that means is that whatever the lunar nodes represent, this group of planets and points in early Capricorn, which is presenting an extremely complex emotional situation, is going to be a kind of a balancing point or tipping point for any activities associated with the lunar nodes. Well, what are the activities of the lunar nodes? In Aries, Libra, the lunar nodes are about personal one-to-one relating and partnering. And so the implication here is that there's a kind of a balancing act or a seesaw act, with the base of the seesaw being the material coming in from the recent past, the medium past, the very distant past, and teeter-tottering on that is this kind of psychic construction called the lunar nodes. I talk about them more frequently when there's an eclipse in the vicinity, but lunar nodes are active whether or not there is an eclipse, and they are a very influential point in any chart. They need to be taken into consideration in any chart, but this is especially true when there is something at 90 degrees to the lunar nodes, because that means lots and lots of karma is balanced on the thing square the nodes. This is called at the bending, and it is one of the most influential aspects in all of astrology. Anything at 90 degrees to the lunar nodes. And the lunar nodes are relatively unobstructed right now in Libra and Aries. There's not a lot clustered around the nodes right now. But to have this thing balancing the nodes, or to be the obstacle that is in the way of individual relating, is very significant. And I think that though we all seem to know this in some way, like many people have been through some form of therapy and realize that issues with family and with parents can be very dominant in situations with our partners. It is never said often enough how much of the unfinished business of the past people are dragging around with them. How much related to opposite sex parents, for example, and then projecting this onto opposite sex partners. And our society tends to treat all these things as if they are somehow political issues. They're going to be solved by the making of policy, right? We're going to make new rules that everyone has to follow, P.S., especially men. And then once these new rules are in place, then everyone is going to be super well behaved and everything is going to be perfect. And this is completely ridiculous. What none of these viewpoints saying that individual people living individual lives, not taking part in movements or any form of public policy, not involved in any form of governmental affairs, don't really give a shit about all of those things. And in the current situation, and as is often true, the political becomes personal. And so we are so accustomed to the political becoming personal in the form of the attempt to have political viewpoints imposed on personal relationships. Right? This is the story of the times that we are living in. It would be more liberated to live under Roman Catholic rule in 1600 than it is today. With every time you turn around, there is some new law or application of law or Supreme Court decision or something that is designed to impose public policy on private matters, whether that is personal conduct, whether people have the freedom to choose whether they get an injection or not. All kinds of public policy is imposed on the privacy and sanctity of the body. This includes the entire ongoing, raging, fuming debate going back 75 years over abortion rights, birth control, all of this. So for us living in the time that we take for granted that there is going to be all of this public policy imposition on the private affairs of what people do and our personal preferences. And that is the theme of the charts that I'm looking at. This situation with the lunar nodes going through about 9 degrees Aries and Libra, and then this cluster of points at about 9 degrees of Capricorn. And so we are standing at this big intersection between the public realm and the private realm. This is also likely to place some stress on interpersonal relationships. Part of the stress that's being placed on interpersonal relationships is the substitution of external concepts of right and wrong, allegedly taking the place of people's actual feelings and experiences. So there is no political or social movement that is actually going to change someone's personal feelings and their responses to a situation, but it can be used as a ruse or a scrim, i.e., someone mad at their father converts that into a political view. That political view takes up residence in a personal relationship like a marriage, and we're already at a third-degree abstraction from the relatively straightforward, or let's say complicated enough, idea of, hello, this is how I feel. So that's one thing going on with this. Now, if you look at the new moon chart, which I'm going to include, that's the new moon of July 5th, 2024, with the new moon right in the ascendant of the Thema Mundi. If you're interested in these topics, I have covered them at length in the past 2 Planet Waves essays. The new moon is at 14 and change Cancer. It is going to be exactly opposite. By exact, I mean like slicing a degree into 10, retrograde series in Capricorn. The concern I have over that is the instigation of global food crisis. Not the real thing, the instigation, but most people don't know the difference between a phony, trumped up bullshit crisis and something that's actually affecting people. Most people assume, and even given what I know about the production of news, that when you see something on a news feed or in a newspaper, see it on a television program, it must be real in some way. But we are at a point here in the age of deep fake that we need to question whether absolutely anything at all that we're told happened. Anything that we're told is happening is actually happening. So, for example, for a couple of months now, we've been hearing over and over again about an alleged issue with quote-unquote avian influenza. Well, let's set aside for a second the way they pretend such a thing exists. This thing is, if it is not a strong enough infection to kill the birds, why do they need to kill them all anyway? So saying, well, we're going to save the birds from dying of avian influenza by killing them. This is the Vietnam War logic. We had to destroy the village in order to save it. However, those of you who have been following my coverage of the 2020 crisis and the polymerase chain reaction, that is not a test for anything, particularly for infection, will recognize that this thing they're calling avian influenza is not a virus that exists in reality. It only exists as computer code, as a metagenomic, gene-aligned, artificial intelligence, phony genetic sequence that does not represent anything that exists in nature. It has never been shown to match a virus, come from a virus, cause a disease, or be contagious. And you can think, how is that possible? Well, if you're wondering how it's possible, you are invited once again to go to planetwaves.fm and click on the chronology tab. And that will take you to the chronology that shows how all of this happens. So why do I bring this up? I'm not here to get you get your hackles up about the existence of viruses, only to say that we are in territory highly cautionary of phony food-related crisis. Why do I say food? Well, Ceres is all about food and agriculture. Yes, the name relates to the modern word cereal, but Ceres can represent any form of agriculture and any form of food that people eat, even astronaut food coming out of toothpaste tubes. And while we're there, the caution, right? So first of all, the new moon, so prominent in the Thema Mundi, the chart of the world, exactly opposite Ceres, is saying, be on notice, pay attention to this. And then there's several other things going on. One of the most important ones, and I maybe have mentioned this in previous podcasts, and I'm going to draw in this symbol, which is the symbol for a planet called Poseidon. And I'm going to circle it in pink. I'm going to put an arrow that says Poseidon in pink. So if you have to be able to read pink to see this, it's not non-repro pink, it's just ordinary pink. Is that Poseidon, this super Neptune, it's a trans-Neptunian point, it does not have a body, it is a thing that exists only in the minds of astrologers, and then it has manifestations in the world, is at 135-degree aspect to Neptune. So this is kind of like a super Neptune making a sesquisquare, fancy term for an aspect that really is very similar to a square. It is one of the ones in the square group. It's 3 semi-squares, 3 times 45 degrees. This is an aspect not respected enough by modern astrology that is a trigger point. And so we get a point of deception, Poseidon, hype, advertising, fantasy, illusion in Scorpio, sesquisquare, a point associated with hype, advertising, illusions, images, delusions, and all that stuff. Neptune in the last degree of Pisces. This is hot, hot, hot. The heat of this is the heat of the constant infliction of deceptive so-called information, deceptive drama inflicted on us constantly 24/7. Most people still believe that there's going to be some truth to anything that they read in the newspaper or on a news feed or whatever. See on Fox or MSNBC. Even after all the baloney that people have been put through, the assumption still goes to the idea that this thing actually may have happened or that it did happen. Regardless of how it may have happened, whatever distortions are associated with it, we assume that Julian Assange got out of jail on Thursday and flew back to Australia. But we don't know this personally. And so now consider that with every last issue that we are facing, every last threat that we are told about. And it is plainly obvious that the purpose of all of this so-called news is to keep people in a state of constant threat and fear and agitation. Because people in a state of constant threat and fear and agitation are going to worry about basically the small things and what seems like the immediate threat, which is very likely to be non-existent, and then not think about the important things and frankly not be able to devote sufficient energy to our own personal lives to have any peace of mind or comfort. That is the situation in which we find ourselves. And we also find ourselves in a situation where we are in a world where potentially anything is computer generated, CGI, deep fake. Literally anything could be fake. And we know this. We hear about this all the time, every day. And the message of that is to make people doubt their own existence, their own reality, the validity of their own personal individual path. And this is going on right now, and it is a durable, lasting influence because these 2 points involved in the torrent of deep, fake, harassing, anxiety-inducing news move only very slowly. Again, Poseidon in Scorpio and Neptune in Pisces. That is most of what I have to say to you this week. The horoscopes are indeed extended horoscopes, so there's plenty in there. And I've added a couple of photos and really appreciated having a day off from writing and a week off from producing an article this week. I am planning a Planet Waves FM for tomorrow night that will cover, among other things, Julian Assange. I'm going to look closely at that and some of the implications of Assange pleading guilty and what that means for journalists here in the digital age and for you who basically see the work of journalists in the digital age, as well as a segment with Brian Eno talking about the atrocities going on in Gaza, Palestine, and a few other things. An interview with a Brazilian medicine man, and then Tantra Studio. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a Planet Waves subscriber and or customer. And bye for now.